Hey, Terrifying Enlightenment. I think we're up to about week 9 or something. We've got a full house tonight. We have Sharon, our physio.
Hello.
We have Christo, our jack of all trades-er and amazing person in general. We have 2 new guests here that Christo has kindly brought along. We have David and we have Rob from Inwardbound. And guys, I'm going to just pass it over to you straight away. What is Inwardbound? What's your mission? Enlighten us.
Yeah, Inwardbound, Ireland's first psychedelic retreat programs. Legal. Why is it legal? Because we're flying people over to the Netherlands, where psilocybin truffles are fully legal. So, we're Irish lads. We saw a desperate need for this practice with so many mental health issues in the world, and people wanting to experience themselves, get to know themselves a bit better, to grow, self-actualization. And all the research has been coming out recently in the research institutions, that's showing that psychedelics have this remarkable effect on mental health. So we jumped in and said, let's make this happen. We've designed a beautiful retreat program, not only for Irish people, of course, but people coming in from all over the world. And that's us. We're starting our first one in March. It's already sold out. And then we'll be running them, regularly over in the Netherlands.
Amazing, guys. I'm going to play devil's advocate today because I'm on your side. I've done all this stuff, and I can understand the mental health benefits myself, especially from a psychologist or student psychologist point of view. So I'm going to pretend I don't know anything and start asking you questions from that point of view. So, for example, why would someone who just views psychedelics, let's say, as an illegal substance, what would you say? How does it help someone with their mental health? Surely this stuff is illegal because it's bad for you.
Yeah, it's some interesting points there. So in the 1960s, it was the first renaissance of psychedelic research, and psychiatrists were using psilocybin and LSD for treating mental health problems. But there was a political backlash against that because the drugs became out in the street as such, and they were misused. They were used in the wrong setting, and there was a fallout from that. So what we're doing in the second wave of psychedelic research is how do you hold space in a safe way for people. And there's a lot of cutting edge scientific research from some of the best research universities in the world, so Johns Hopkins University in the United States and Imperial College London, showing incredible potential for the use of psilocybin for depression and anxiety and end-of-life anxiety and a range of conditions when administered within the correct setting, which is really important to emphasize, with the correct dosage in conjunction with other forms of therapy. And that's what we're doing.
Do you guys want to tell me about your journey towards how this began and your own entries into this kind of sphere of life? Yeah,
well, my personal background is I am an outdoor guide since I left college. I travelled all over the world.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, but it's amazing. But I've kind of transitioned away from that through various different traumas in my own life that I experienced. So since about 2013, I started retraining as a psychotherapist, graduated as a psychotherapist, and found this healing journey in my own self of how to, heal yourself. And through that I discovered psilocybin and ayahuasca and the power of the plants to really go deep, to the core issues of someone's inner traumas or self-actualization. It's not all dark, it can be a lot of light as well. So the potential to explore your own psyche is huge with these substances when done correctly, and it is important to emphasize that because there are risks if it's not done safely.
I have a very similar story to yourself in that I'd been reading and listening to a lot of, let's say, spiritual teachers or enlightened people, let's say, for probably a decade, and I conceptually understood everything, and I would actually say the same things as I say now, but the difference in the experience of this other perspective on life, that the substances literally give you the first-hand experience rather than the conceptual idea, makes so much more difference than just these conceptual ideas. And I think that for someone who's struggling mentally, that ability to step aside from their rigid viewpoint, even if they don't realize they have a rigid viewpoint, allows them to almost look at their life from a completely different point of view. And then that gives them the space to grow and change and maybe heal as well. What do you think, David?
Yeah, that worked for me. Yeah, I mean, it's my story. You know, I don't advise anyone to start a dog food company without trying the dog food. So here we are doing a psychedelic retreat company, and we've all been through it, and that's why we're motivated to do it from the heart. These substances have helped me enormously. I used to suffer from depression, anxiety. Like, I think 20 to 30% of Irish people have chronic depression. I was one of that number, and essentially healed myself with psychedelics. And then I got to a point where it's like, oh, what's next? And I was basically told by the forest in South America to tell me to go home to Ireland and find your native medicine, which is mushrooms, and tell everyone about it. Tell the others, you know. It's like, it's Earth itself. It's saying, wake up, humans! You know, I have the answers for many of the issues you're suffering with, and they're growing under your feet. You know, and we have them here in Ireland, out in the hills, like not 20 kilometers away from where we are. We have our own native psychedelic medicine that can help people, and it's illegal.
It's amazing to realize that the mushrooms that we have naturally growing in Ireland are actually some of the strongest variety in the world. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. The stronger they are, the more helpful they can be almost. So it's something that people need to be informed of. And like, we all are aware of the drinking culture in Ireland, and it's almost, when people consume alcohol, you can have a great time. There's nothing wrong with having a drink, but it's generally an escape. And it causes more problems rather than fixing some of the problems that you may have. And we all know about hangovers, and you're basically ingesting a toxin that your liver has to process, and while you're intoxicated, your inhibitions are lowered and you have a little bit of a good time. Maybe make some bad decisions, maybe get in a fight, or maybe just do things that you're not proud of the next day, or maybe have a great time. Who knows, depending on your experience with alcohol. But when you take something like a psychedelic, you're thrown into your own psyche, and you have to walk that line between chaos and order. Let's not go too deep into that because it gets very complicated, but I find that you start to see your own tendencies from a point of view where you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize I did that all the time for that reason. And suddenly, once you understand something or the problem, you can start changing the problem. I think Sharon has been jumping into this space regularly over the last 2 years since she's met me as well, and it's been relatively for her.
What?
Revelatory. That's
Revelatory.
the one. Got there.
All I know is I have never woken up with the fear from psychedelics, and that's a huge deal. I've woken up with the fear from alcohol, and it just makes everything worse. I've woken up with the fear from... Actually, I've never done anything else. But yeah, never woken up with the fear. I've done psychedelics a good lot of times now at this stage, and it's just getting better and better. Granted, confused and hard and difficult, and I've been on a roller coaster, but it's slowly getting much better. Yeah.
Sharon is the poster girl for somebody who was very anti-drugs.
Oh yeah,
very anti-drugs, and had her preconceptions. And she grew up in a rougher part of Dublin, and so she saw a lot of the trouble that drugs can bring to a community, and so her attitude was, these are bad, these are going to cause problems, and I managed to corrupt her mind.
You didn't?
No, I just
he didn't
presented you with the evidence.
I'm very research, just given my health professional background. So I'm like, show me the evidence, and Mark just kept showing me the evidence. And then I could see the evidence with him. He was like an actual case study right in front of me. Right. So I just couldn't. So it was like, 9 months or something. Well, you told me about the ayahuasca first, and then it was like about 9 months after mushrooms before I decided to take them, and then I was very kind of careful with them. But every time now I'm like, I should have taken more. So yeah,
don't diddle the dose.
No, stop. Yeah, every time I'm like, oh, I should have taken more. But they've been fantastic in helping me let go of fears, anxieties, irrational thoughts, just egoic way of living in general. Don't get me wrong, I'm not there. I'm not in that place where I'm completely free, but we'll see. We'll see. It's getting better.
Guys, so let's your next retreat's booked out. Say there's someone out there and they go, I'm sold. I'm kind of scared to do it by myself, but these guys can maybe guide me through something new. What would someone expect if they were to sign up and come on one of your journeys?
So the first thing to say is that we're not pushing anything on anyone. We're very careful who we take on these retreats, and we screen people carefully. At the moment, we don't take anyone with severe mental health problems or people who are very sick. So anyone with schizophrenia, psychosis, severe depression, bipolar, personality disorders, we don't take. And then there's a careful screening process, because I really liked what you were saying about how you need to be introduced slowly to these psilocybin, and so we screen people. We have a consultation session, and it's a mutual exchange of ideas. So if the fit's there, we take people, and otherwise we don't. And then we go on the retreat, and afterwards there's a really important integration process, which is also equally important, because I really hear what you're saying. You know, there's in this country in particular, I think there's a lack of consciousness. There's so much shame and trauma in the Irish psyche. We inherited it. It's been passed down in our DNA, or epigenetically, and these medicines help go there, but it needs to be done in the correct way. There has been terrible fallout from the misuse of drugs and from the unconscious use of drugs, and we've all seen that that can happen. But what we're talking about is using these as consciously as possible, as tools for exploring your own psyche, expanding your consciousness, and healing. Yeah.
I've been talking to a few people that have taken some magic mushrooms and psychedelics recently, and I'm very surprised because of my first experience was ayahuasca. When I decided to take psilocybin, I did it in an intention way, where I was like, okay, this is something that's going to be quite deep, and I need to respect it. And I actually go to the park, Phoenix Park, by myself. I find a quiet place and I sit down and I'm in nature, and the process is self-exploration. I don't actually want to, let's say, have a good time, so to speak. But other people I've spoken to who have had experience with psychedelics, and they've taken it, like they've gone to Amsterdam, and they're out for a party and they're laughing all night. They're like, oh, these will make you laugh all night. We had a great time. And you're like, wow, that's so far from, it's the same substance, and yet it's so far from my own experience, which is so unbelievably profound and so spiritual, really, that it's incredible to try and show people that your intention matters so much, and they will give you what you deserve, so to speak. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, you're absolutely right. Intention is key, and in our retreats we'll start setting intention weeks before, start getting people to think about that. Why are you coming here, and get it really clear, and then they'll have much better results because of that. I don't think taking them recreation is necessarily a bad thing. I think just giggling with your friends for the evening is enormously healing, absolutely healing. But in our retreats, there's no giggling, sometimes maybe, but the intention is totally different. People are not there to laugh about things; they're there to do the deep inner work. So the mushrooms react to that, and they give you what you request of them.
That's like I suppose I have a question there, as in, right, it's great setting intentions. I've done it myself, but every single time I had an intention, it did something different, but it was exactly what I needed at that point to lead to the next thing, so each following dose after that would complement the last bit, and if I didn't know the last bit, then I wouldn't have learned the next
piece
part
of the puzzle.
So regardless of my intentions, and I think I said this to Mark a lot, I've stopped expecting anything.
Intentions is not setting intention is not the same as having expectations. Expectations are very dangerous to have, because you'll only end up disappointed.
Absolutely.
So we try to say to people, don't have any expectations about how it's going to turn out. It's not going to be like the movies. It's not going to be like this or that. It's going to be something completely different, and you'll, like you say, Sharon, you'll get exactly what you need.
Yes, every time,
without fail. And you won't even realise at the moment. Maybe it comes with days or weeks later. I'm
still in awe. I say to him as well, every time I underestimate them. Every time you forget. and you're thinking, it'd be good, and then you come out again after another experience, and you're going, wow,
Holy shit!
I can't believe it. I forgot how powerful they were and how good they are. But yeah, expectation completely different to having an intention, and I think with intention for me, it doesn't mean I have an intention and it's going to be resolved within one thing. It might not. It could take a few.
Yes.
So that's what I found.
You're tapping into a really deep truth there,
Yeah.
Based on the work of guys like Carl Jung and Dr. Stanislav Grof, the famous psychiatrist whose model that we use. They recognise that the psyche is a self-regulating mechanism, and by that they meant that whatever comes up from your subconscious is what's meant to come up. So there's a couple of ways to tap into your subconscious, dream work being the most obvious, but psilocybin allows us to go into our own subconscious minds. And it really, in a way, there's a safety valve built in because it allows you to go to the depths that you're ready and able to go to. You can end up in some challenging places. You can go into anxiety or fear, but generally there's a reason for going there, and it gives you a different perspective on those anxieties and fear, and then there's a healing to be found through that.
Yeah.
So once you see it as self-exploration of your own sub and collective unconscious, it really kind of opens up a whole world of self-exploration. Yeah.
Christo, tell us what your opinion on all of this is, how you're related to it, what you envision for the future of all this stuff,
What I envision is a world that doesn't deny the access to these natural medicines that we need to have access to. Simple as that. It's as simple as that. Just let me dig from the ground and heal myself. Stop taking things that are inherent in the world and banning them. Ban the stuff that you make. Ban the stuff that your pharmaceutical companies make. Ban all that. Don't ban what nature, what Gaia gave me, what Gaia gave us, what Gaia gave herself. So that's my standpoint. I'm very gung-ho on this. And
but to be honest, I am as well, Christo.
yeah,
But I realise the standpoint that a person like myself, if I was listening to this 4 or 5 years ago, would have.
yeah,
And so I try and speak to those people. But if I was 100% honest, I'd be very gung-ho as well. I'm like,
yeah.
take it. You'll understand when you take it.
Well-
You won't understand until you take it.
When
That's
true. When I say gung-ho though, I don't mean force feeding people these, because again, it's like if you're not sick, don't take the medicine. So I think there comes a point in someone's life where it might call them, so let it call you rather than you calling it. And
I think we live in a sick society, though.
we
Just
do.
about to say that.
We do, and
I think everyone
I
is sick,
know-
but not everyone knows.
yeah, I suppose playing devil's advocate, you could say that people may come from the point of view, well, if it's legal, then everyone's just going to keep using it. I'm like, okay, that definitely could be a possibility, but I do think that with this type of substance, it is more difficult for the majority of people to keep using such a difficult,
Absolutely.
After a night on the mushrooms, the last thing you want to do the next day is get back on it. You're like,
exactly.
I think I've had enough of my fill for a while.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to note then they were made illegal by Mary Harney. The fresh ones were made illegal by Mary Harney in 2006 because a man called Colin Hodgkinson jumped out of a balcony. And God rest his soul, but he had a cocktail of drugs. He had cocaine, he had alcohol, he had all that stuff, and they blame the mushrooms. I'm not sure exactly what model is going to work legally speaking.
Yeah.
Do you need a license? Do you need to have a clinical practitioner, or is it free for all? I'm on the fence with that. But definitely prohibition is not serving the people that need it most.
That always reminds me of the Bill Hicks line, which is about how, like, if you think you can fly, take off from the ground first.
Yeah.
If you
He's basically saying people are.
yeah, he was
stupid.
like, we lost an idiot. Like, if you think you can fly, then take off from the ground. Like, you don't need to jump out of a window. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
But yeah, like you were mentioning earlier, it's important to screen and make sure that you're not this guy who jumped off a balcony. Who knows what was going on with him?
Yeah, and I do
Tell
think,
any
I do think it
pre-
is important to note that you
Mm.
know, people, like, there have been tragedies and people
Absolutely. Yeah.
do have bad experiences. And
Mhm.
I just think that's important to mention. Like, these are amazing tools
Mhm.
and they're very valuable, and there is a but, and that is important to recognise
Mhm.
because, you know, if they're not done in the correct way, if you take too much, if you're in an unsafe environment, or if you're not in the right headspace, you can have traumatic and damaging experiences. And just anyone who's, you know, 16 years old and listens to this, I think it is important to just
Yeah.
put that out there.
Find someone with experience. Like
Mhm.
Rob's not saying you have to come with us.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own path.
Yeah.
You know, you can do it by yourself if you have some experience. If you do your research, you don't have to come with us.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? But definitely don't go in. Yeah, and Rob can tell you some horror stories, but don't go in without any research and without educating yourself, because you don't know what the dose is. You don't know that you need to be in a safe place. You know, if you just take a handful of mushrooms and go into Grafton Street, you're gonna not maybe have such a nice time.
Take
you
a
know?
handful. Good luck for your first time.
Okay, guys, I've signed up. I've got on the flight. I've landed in Holland. What's the next step? Am I driving to a specific place? What's the place like? Are food included? Accommodation included? Is there a therapy-like process where you introduce people to some of the conceptual ideas of what they might expect on this experience? Is there multiple doses? Is it 3 times over the weekend? What's the layout?
Yeah, so the people we're catering for are really people who don't have access. You know, if you're young and living in Ireland, you can probably access these medicines yourself. We're catering for people who really want to try these things and can't. So we're providing a model that's very safe and very held. We have a beautiful retreat centre in Holland. We have a team of facilitators with a range of different skills, from art therapy to yoga. We do a lot of group work, facilitation, circle work. The first evening we get everyone to know each other, break down the boundaries, connect people, connect them to themselves and each other. And then we do 2-step doses over a 2-day period, and then a 2-day integration period with a lot of group work, body work, embodiment. So people really connecting back into themselves, because you can go quite far out. So we're bringing people back in, as you mentioned, grounding. So embodiment for me means, or integration for me means embodying the vision. So bringing it back to the body and sending them home, hopefully happy and healthy and a big smile on their face.
Yeah. That sounds lovely.
Yeah.
The whole embodiment, the yoga, the body work, getting to know each other, creating a safe environment, safe space. That sounds really important. Yeah.
Yeah, and the group is important. People don't realise how important it is that you're coming together, and you often learn a lot from witnessing other people's journeys.
Absolutely, yeah.
And people make bonds for life in the group, you know. People really, then they come back again, or they'll stay in contact and share each other's stories. So that group energy is like lovely to see. And it's a case of us kind of getting out of the way. We're not the saviors, we're not the wizards, we're just setting things up so you guys can do your work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So definitely not trying to stroke egos at all, and trying to be as completely invisible to the participants, and just allowing space for them to do their work. And like Rob said, those 2 days after the mushroom work are for integration, and we've loads of activities. Or you know, you can do nothing if you really want your own personal time.
Yeah.
You can go out into nature, it's out in the forest. You can do your own thing, you know. We'll be there to not supervise but to answer questions, because we have the experience and the qualifications to bring in whatever works best in the research models as proposed by MAPS, John Hopkins and Imperial College London primarily.
MAPS is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, isn't that right? And
Yeah, US based.
maps.org is the website. So if anybody out there is doubting the validity of what we're saying, just go onto that website and you will see that they're going into, I think, phase 3 trials in America, which is basically that they have proven, very, very strongly proven evidence that this is very, very, very powerful and legitimate medication that can really help. And in particular, treatment resistant depression. So people who have gone through the mill and they're really at their wits' end. And I think that what Rob said, that while you guys at the moment don't cater for, let's say, people with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, personally, I think that long term, those are the people that would benefit the most from this. But obviously, they're the people who need the most amount of guidance, the longest integration period, the most amount of therapy to go along with it. Because first of all, I was very attached to my what I term my psychological self. So you have your idea of yourself as your mind, your thoughts, and I think mindfulness is becoming quite popular nowadays. In fact, I'm going to be giving some mindfulness talks to a company for the next 4 weeks, and it's very easy to explain to people that you're not your body. If you chop your arm off, it's still you. You don't look like what you look like when you were 5. So there's things are changing. You're not your body. Okay, now what else are you not? You're not your mind. So you're not the thoughts. The thoughts are transient. There's gaps between the thoughts. When you're sleeping, you're still there, and so on and so on and so on. But to actually experience yourself as not your mind, and your mind is racing and confused, trying to figure out what's going on, why it can't control what's happening, I think that's a very difficult experience to navigate through. And I think that if somebody can be guided through it with a therapist, a shamanic practitioner, and someone who really knows the territory, it's a very, very valuable thing. So I applaud you for doing what you're doing, and I think it's very needed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think there's a couple of points you're right in saying there's so much potential for other ways of working within the psychiatric system, and that's going to happen, I think, in the future. Working with very sick people. Our model, we can't work with them right now. But also what you mentioned there about mindfulness and meditation. So these are tools, and really powerful and beautiful tools. But I think you're right. If you don't have some form of meditation or mindfulness practice, whether it be whatever it might be, it's very hard to embody or to ground the psychedelic experience. So I would say it's almost essential to have a mindfulness practice. And if your mindful meditation practice is strong and deep enough, you can go to these spaces without the use of any substance. You know, these Tibetan masters living in a cave would actually have these psychedelic experiences just from these darkness meditations they would do. So the mind is an amazing thing, and these are ways of exploring.
I was trying to think of, because I'm preparing for these talks, and I was trying to think of how to get across the idea of not being able to describe an experience. And there's this fruit in Thailand called smelly fruit. Have any of you had smelly fruit?
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Okay, perfect.
Rob,
this is exactly this is
Smelly fruit.
This is
sweet. By
it's actually
accident.
very tasty, but it smells disgusting, right?
Taste.
So there is no way I could possibly explain through words what this thing tastes like. I could be like, it's sweet. Well, like what? Like an orange? No, not like an orange. Like a pear? No. It's kind of like a
methane.
Passion fruit, but not really.
Gassy though.
It smells really bad, but tastes really good. Like I could talk for infinity, but unless you actually ate the fruit, which is the sensation, which is the actual experience, you can't know what that fruit tastes like. Similarly, with something like swimming, if I was to try to teach someone how to swim without ever letting them in the water and show them the arms movements and everything.
Cool running style in the bathtub.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. That person will not learn how to swim unless they get into some water. And it's even saying this doesn't get across the point that unless you are in a space where you realize that your psychological self is not who you are. Because we go around our lives thinking that is who we are, but that's only a very small part of who we are, and it's actually full of misconceptions and half-truths, and so when you experience that that's not who you are, it doesn't matter how much preparation you have had, other than there's someone there with you telling you it's okay, it's okay. Relax, calm, it's all right.
That's exactly it. It's the difficulty of describing the psychedelic experience to someone who's never had that experience. It's impossible. When you're talking about these mystical states of consciousness that all great civilizations had, a vocabulary for, in a way, except ours. We're stuck in this materialist bubble that doesn't. We've lost touch, but there's such a demand. People want these transcendent experiences, whatever way that might be. Some people it's nature connection or yoga or meditation. So yeah, it's really wonderful to be part of. And then the other thing to mention, of course, is that a lot of these states are actually beyond language. So language doesn't even begin to
Hugely
describe
beyond
them.
language.
Hugely
Language
beyond
is the problem.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
So
Every experience I have, I will talk to. I've started to. We started to talk less now about it because I'm like, there's no point.
Yeah, you end up
We just ruin it, but you
taking
get-
the power away from it
This
if you
is it,
put
you get brought
words
back.
on it and labels on it, and that's why
Yeah.
we prescribe a period of sacred or noble silence.
Yes, absolutely.
After each session, because then people aren't inclined. People aren't. They're encouraged not to try and put the intellectual mind on it,
Yes.
and reduce it to something that can be verbalized. And often take away the majesty and the mystery and of the experience. So
I
we
find
say,
sometimes
like,
you
don't even try for a while.
Revert a little bit
Yeah.
if you talk about it for too long,
Yeah, it's true.
because you get caught up in the I, the me, me, mine. I did this, I did that during it, I did this. It's just that's not what you're trying to achieve. But I remember Mark, for months and months before I ever tried psychedelics, he was always describing it to me, like the concepts, and telling me that this, that and the other, like telling someone how to swim. You're never really going to know what it's like. And I'd always say to him, I get it, I understand, but that's not helping me. I get it, it's not helping me now. And then I experience it and I go, it's helping me now. Because there's nothing like thinking about it and conceptualizing it. It's completely different when you actually feel it. They're just not the same at all. Or you do say they're two sides of the same.
Two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, but it's just, there's no point. You can talk till you're blue in the face about this, but the experience is just, you can't. You can't.
And that's why people come to our retreats with a certain level of anxiety, is because we can't. There's no way we can describe it.
Yeah.
Just that basic fear of the unknown. Like, what am I getting myself into? People are maybe flying in from the States or something like that across the ocean to do one of these things. And of course they're going to be nervous, and there's nothing we can say. It's like, no. It's going to be fine. Nobody's come and regretted it. So afterwards you're going to look back and think, what was I so nervous about?
You just have to say you'll be fine after.
You'll be fine, yeah. You'll be fine after. You'll be changed.
Yeah.
But that's why you come. We embrace change, you know. And then we check in. Afterwards we have a group call. We have a consultation.
That's great, yeah.
And we have lots of little check-ins afterwards to see how people are getting on. And we care. Like, it's not just like sending them off after, say, you can do ayahuasca work here, but you have the traveling shaman coming in and then you never see him again. You never see the group again, and people are going back to the work the next day and going, what the hell just happened? Like, how on earth can I integrate this into my life? And a lot of people maybe just package it up and don't process it.
And
it's
probably don't go further then.
Yeah, don't go any further.
Yeah.
From, let's say, a layperson's point of view, if you talked to me 3-4 years ago and you said shaman, I would have imagined some Indian looking, like a Native American looking guy, making funny noises, shaking a rattle, and I would have said just doing very superstitious stuff with gullible people. So that is not my opinion anymore whatsoever. But again, looking in from the outside, how would you describe what a shaman is doing and what their expertise is?
that's a really good point. First of all, to state clearly that we don't see ourselves as shamans. We're not working. Well, we've been trained shamanically as shamanic counsellors in the Irish Centre for Shamanic and Transpersonal
Is that in
Studies.
Waterford?
No, it's down in Meath.
Okay.
It's been there for 20 years, and plus it's a really amazing place. And just to state, shamanism is a really simple healing modality that is universal in all cultures and all times. It doesn't involve, the model we use does not involve us waving magic wands and healing people. We are creating a safe container and allowing people to access their own inner healer. So there's an important distinction to make there, because in the shamanic world there is a lot of misuse and abuse of power, and there's a lot of controversy. So we are very clear in our ethics and boundaries of how we work, and that's important to recognise.
I like that.
And just to mention as well, we have a Celtic tradition in Ireland that goes back many thousands of years, and we're just reconnecting with, we're reconnecting to the cycles of nature, we're reconnecting to the land, we're reconnecting to our own ancestral and spiritual traditions. So
Yeah.
call it what you will. Shamanism is a very loaded word. Let's just call it nature connection,
Yeah.
ancestral connection to the land, and that's it's better.
I'm studying yoga at the moment to become an instructor, but I'm doing it through the Celtic School of Yoga.
Jack Harrison,
Yeah.
amazing man, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely
Yeah,
amazing
yeah,
guy.
Yeah.
And there was cheaper ways of doing it, quicker ways of doing it, but integrating that Celtic history and viewpoint, and the mysticism, I assume, will come later, because there's a lot of lay people that are too much too soon, and I think that he'll integrate a lot of this stuff the further we go along. But just that deep, like, for example, one of the first things we did, we went we went on a walk through the burn to a holy well and oratory that had a cave where an old monk used to meditate. And we got to the gate and he just said, okay, everybody, we're going to walk in silence for the next half an hour, 20 minutes until we get there, you know. And that's that kind of thing where you're like, to a lot of people that would be kind of odd. And but I think then when you're doing that, it's, you know, stop with your own little chatter and actually take in everything that's around you and the beauty that's all around you that you are a part of.
And the magic of this land, like this, that we've disconnected ourselves from our ancestral traumas, from our epigenetic traumas passed down. We've lost connection to ourselves as a race of people. And now we're finding ways to reconnect, whether it's walking in nature. It's amazing. It feels such a wonderful time to be Irish, to be reconnecting to this heritage, our heritage. It's in our bones, it's in our DNA. So it's
I'm so happy I came home. I was living away for 7-8 years. Didn't want to come home. Came home, hated it, and then went deep into that. Why am I hating that? Why? Like, what is that? Why am I fleeing? Why am I escaping? And it was like Rob said, there was ancestral trauma to be cleared there, and there is work to be done here. And it's very easy to emigrate and, you know, make money elsewhere, but it's hard to stay here and do that ancestral clearing that we're all doing here. And yeah, we're reconnecting with all the old traditions, and mushrooms are one of those traditions, you know. And it's become a kind of a peeve of mine to see so many people looking elsewhere, looking outside, looking to South American shamans or Mexican shamans for their healing, when we should be building our own self-confidence to do the work here with our own native medicines and practices.
I agree.
It's very sad.
I had something to ask you guys, but it's gone out of my head. If I was to ask you a question that I haven't asked you yet, what would it be? I did have something to say.
What's the big picture? Well, for me, what's the future? And I would say, why are we so passionate about this? I think because the world is in crisis.
Yes.
You know, we don't have much time to get it to raise consciousness, to waken people up. There are many ways of doing that, yoga being one of them, and there's lots of them, meditation. But I think I've come around to the conclusion that psychedelic use is the way to waken people up fastest. Enough people to shift consciousness. Let's stop going on business as usual. Back in UCD here, haven't been here in years. Like, people going out in the world there, you know, like out to become lawyers and accountants or whatever they're doing. It's like, come on, the world is dying around us. We need to really change we need to change how we operate. All of us, collectively. And let's start doing it now.
That's basically what I forgot that I was about to say, was something very similar, in that I think that the world is going to destroying itself, but it's also, I don't know if it's equal, but it's almost, we're all waking up at the same time as well, collectively. You know? And I think this seemed to have kicked off a little bit in the 60s and 70s, but it was, as Alan Watts said, it was ill-disciplined. And he said that the people in the Zen Buddhist tradition instilled discipline in their Zen monks, so that when they did become awake, then they had that discipline to actually guide it towards their intended goals, rather than just a whole, you know, drop acid and drop out, which really, while there is a valuable underlying message that, looking in from the outside as someone who isn't part of that, you'd look at it and go, what a bunch of wasters, you know. But really, there's actually quite a deep understanding going on with that dropout message, but you don't get it until you go there. And what are your thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely deconditioning agents, you know. The psychedelic experience will definitely awaken you to what doesn't work in society, what you've been taught that is false, that is not serving the greater good, which is the health of the planet in its entirety. So once you are deconditioned to those, negative thought patterns which turn into actions, you can start to construct your life and start thinking the right way, and acting the right way that is not destructive to the earth and yourself. And those two things are flip sides of the same thing,
And you're exactly right what you said about discipline. So Ram Dass mentioned that the great mistake they made in the 60s was they thought that the psychedelic experience was going to change the world, and they were wrong about that, because what it does, it awakens people, but it doesn't enlighten you. So what is required on top of the psychedelic experience is discipline and some form of practice.
Yeah, meet them
Embodied
halfway.
practice. Yeah.
Meet them halfway.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, let's say, a permanent solution. You take mushrooms for depression, and the research says after 6 months, 80% of people will be in remission, according to one study, 67% after 6 months in another study. But then what happens next? The effects start to fade, so you have to do half the work. You have to meet them halfway. You get the message, change your behavior, do more exercise, eat better, and mushrooms will tell you this. I don't know if you want to consider them a separate intelligence or something coming from deep down within you. They'll tell you how to change your behavior so that you're not sick all the time. So you don't need to go back all the time. They're not permanent. You have to meet them halfway, and that's what we're talking about. Is in terms of becoming enlightened and bringing in all the other tools. And when I do this work, the meditation really comes in, all the Zen practice really comes in, the yoga comes in. I can go deeper and be safer because I have all the other practices that all the mystics and the ancients, the others talk about. It's not either or. They're all tools, eh?
I was going to say, the deeper I'm going and the larger doses I'm taking, I've combined that with yoga because it grounds me. So it's almost like Sharon has seen it. It's basically, if I just try and, let's say I take some psilocybin, and the initial stage was it's almost like there is a path in this, at least a personal one. I assume it's different for everybody, but my path anyway was bliss at first, then it was fear, and then it was understanding the fear, then it was integrating the fear and combining the fear with the love and realizing that it's all one, and then moving beyond that and then turning it into not just a lying there and experiencing things, but also like a moving practice where you're walking around in nature with your eyes open, not giving yourself too far to the experience, and not I think Alan Watts said it again, basically you don't want to go spend too long in heaven, and you don't want to spend too long in hell. You have to walk that line, that path between chaos and order. And so that was the next stage for me, was to be able to function almost quite normally with the substances, not let myself get taken too much, but allow it to take me to a certain point, even though the doses were getting larger. And I feel like there is this progression that people are taking on to get to a point where they realize that the work is to be done in everyday life.
Yeah.
And that you're being taught that you have been conditioned, and people don't realize they've been conditioned. Like anything that somebody says is conditioning. I mean, the language that we have, the fact that we're speaking English and not Japanese or
Gaelic,
Irish, or this language that we have is conditioning. It's not necessarily a bad conditioning, but it is dualistic language, which means it comes from the standpoint of a subject object. I am doing X, so that is I am looking at a tree. So therefore, to even say that sentence means that there is something called a tree in reality. It is separate to me, and that's just the structure of the sentence. And it's useful to communicate with people, but these have hidden underlying assumptions and conditioning within them, these sentences, that people don't realize. And even when you spell it out to them in English, they're like, oh, that's an interesting idea, and then they continue on with their life. But the psychedelics will show you that these conditionings are actually allowing you to live in a way that is totally disconnected from nature.
Yes, that's exactly it. And effectively what we're doing, like you say, is rewilding people connecting them to themselves, and through that connection with themselves to each other and to nature. And that's it. And there's a great quote: it's not much use if it doesn't grow corn. So it's all well and good having these mystical experiences going out, and you see people like that, they're caught up in their upper chakras, they're lost. But how do you embody that in your everyday life? That's the key, and that requires a moral and ethical code of an ability to change your relationships and change how you act with people, change how you treat people, and that's where the hard work is, the inner work, the hard inner work, and that's the fruits, I suppose, of the psychedelic experience. Yeah.
I remember someone said to Joe Rogan, he's like, I don't want to do it because I don't want to just quit my job as a lawyer and become a yoga instructor. and Joe Rogan said to him, well, if you did that, you'd probably be much happier because you've been guided towards that. So the only reason you think that it would be a bad thing is because you're in this perspective you have now. But if you move to the other perspective, you'd actually realize that perspective will actually give you everything you're looking for. So it's very hard when you're on the outside to look in. And this is the whole thing, guys. You gotta jump into the abyss sometimes and see what happens.
Shake it up a bit, and the psychedelic experience is a bit like a snow globe in that sense. It's like shake it up, and you don't know where the snow is going to land, but it's not going to land the same way it did before.
That's very true for me. I struggled a lot with applying it. So I'd have the psychedelic experience, and then for 3 or 4 days afterwards, everything was great. I was applying with it, and I was meeting it halfway, and then I just get possessed again.
Get the contraction then.
Oh man, I was hijacked again, and what was it like? And it was very difficult for me, and I'm only starting now, like it's probably been like 8 times or something now, and it's only beginning for me. That acceptance is happening for me, and I'm doing the things that will, I suppose, enhance the experiences I've had. And like, I mean, I would go to yoga now a lot, super beneficial, but I can get into, not by choice, I just end up in some meditative psychedelic states sometimes. At the end of yoga, in Shavasana, or during it.
Same. Yesterday, it happened to me, and like I was in the middle of a class, having this awakening. I was like, I had to kind of reel it in a bit,
I've had a few emotional releases in yoga. That came out of nowhere, just bang, and I was like sobbing, but obviously keeping it to myself. I wasn't like the freak in the corner who's crying. Nobody understands. But like just massive emotional releases and coming out going, oh, that's what that was, Whereas I don't think if I'd never had psychedelics before that would ever happen. And I used to be one of those that would go to yoga and just do the motions of yoga. And understand the concepts that they'd say, and let go of your day, and you're like, sure, but it's completely different than when you're doing the things that are going to help you along this path after your psychedelic experience. It's completely different. And you get to you truly experience it.
You catch yourself, don't you? You catch yourself, like something that would piss me off is like, oh, they don't have my favourite biscuits in the supermarket. And then I just burst out laughing at myself in the middle of the supermarket. Get over yourself.
Story of my life now. And be like, if I'd react to certain things and I go, oh, for God's sake, this is pointless. What am I reacting for?
Yeah, and having you can get there with loads of meditation. You can get to that point where you just catch yourself having this, and then those emotions only last a little 10 seconds, and then you're back to baseline.
I always describe it as that as well. I say I catch myself. I catch it.
It's like the famous Viktor Frankl quote, between stimulus and response there's a pause, and in that pause is like our space for freedom. It's very true. Catching ourselves. You still get triggered. You still get triggered every day.
Of course.
So you're like, you get angry, you get annoyed, you get sad. Otherwise you're spiritual bypassing, you're just going into love and light, and that's not good either. So you need to feel the so-called negative emotions, feel bad, feel angry, but am I going to really react out of that space? Well, maybe still sometimes, but hopefully not anywhere near as much as I used to.
A lot less.
It's okay that you get a little bit upset that they don't have your favourite biscuits. But it's not going to ruin your day.
Brush it off. Like it wouldn't consume your day anymore. Or, Like I used to find myself having conversations about scenarios that may occur. In my head I'd be saying, right, well if she says this then I'll say that back, and then I'm thinking, that might never happen. Just go, see what's going on. And the scenarios you play out in your head never happen.
Yeah, all those chess moves.
It's totally different to what you
You're more present, aren't you? Like you can walk into the studio today, before this work, it might have been, oh my god, I'm going to have to talk about what I'm interested in, what I'm doing, I'm going to prepare, and it's like you get to a stage you're like, no, everything's just gonna flow. You
This
just
is
talk
it.
from the heart, like, you don't worry about the future.
I don't have to prepare anymore. I used to be like, I better prepare. Oh no, I'm not prepared for that, so I won't do that job. Or no, I'm not going to do that. And now I'm coming from the point of go, sure, I'll give it a go. It'll work out. It'll be grand.
Yeah.
Always works out.
Just
Always
coming down a
grand.
bit to neuroplasticity, to go back to the
Yeah.
psychedelic experience, what has been proven is that it does improve your neuroplasticity, the ability to kind of break through our like formal structures of really rigid thinking of how we do things, and allows us to kind of try new things, and
Seems to balance the left-right hemisphere of the brain a little bit more as well.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to touch on the trauma aspect of things,
Yes.
because karma seems to be a word that's very misunderstood, because people think that karma seems to be like cosmic punishment or something like that, but it's almost like it's your action. And so there's been a lot of action and events that have happened that needs to be taken on by society and actually processed correctly, because we all have our own personal trauma, and then there's trauma of society, of our own little, let's say different subgroups. Let's say feminine trauma. Then we have our country's trauma, Ireland's history. Then we have just the universal worldly trauma of war, and it seems to be what I've touched on is that the deeper you go into the psychedelic experience, the more you almost want to take on more. I don't know how to express this well. Do you guys?
More of the suffering?
Yeah, I think you're getting into the shamanic realms now, where
Yeah.
you're not just doing your own personal work, you're starting to work for the collective.
Yeah.
And there's a huge need for that, and some people are drawn to that work.
Yeah.
It's amazing, beautiful work. For example, there's so much going around the feminine and the masculine. It's coming into the collective, the damage and the hurt and the pain that's been caused from centuries of abuse. It's all coming to the surface, and collectively, how do we go about healing that? That's a huge question. It's
without swinging the pendulum too far as well.
Yeah. So that's when the shamanic work comes in really into its own, I think.
Yeah, it's curious to say that, because I would get war images during psychedelic journeys.
Wow.
I'm like, I've never been to war, I don't think about war, why am I seeing war images in my own journeys? And of course there's no such thing as your own journey. Everything is part of the collective on that level. And I was seeing the collective trauma of war, all these images of war, and my purpose in that was just to observe and to realize that the whole of the earth is observing wars. It's not just a human thing. It leaves an energetic impact on all creatures of
And
earth.
from the perspective of the great psychologist and psychiatrist Carl Jung, of course, it's the collective unconscious. We're all linked. We're not this Newtonian physics of just being separate entities, atomized. We are collective. We are together, and what happens to one of us happens to all of us. And only in the past 500 years have we forgotten that. So it's remembering. Actually, what we're doing is remembering that we are connected, and the collective is so. That what happened. How do we heal the collective? That's the essential question for all of us going forward, because we need to do it, and we need to do it quickly.
And this is a good example. I've been thinking about this myself. This is a very good example of how language doesn't capture it, right? Because we use words like we and us, and we need to realize that we're all one and things like that. But when you use those sentences, the word we implies more than one, and that us implies more than one. But really, there's just the one. And even saying there's just the one implies two. Yeah. And other than one, which is why people call it non-duality instead of instead of oneness, and so on and so forth.
Like, what's God's favorite joke? Two.
I'm laughing as God.
So
I don't get it.
But you wouldn't get that.
So yeah, you're like everything you said is 100% correct, and yet language can't capture it. No. So someone will try and conceptually imagine themselves as part of everything, rather than actually feeling that.
Well, I mean, like you said earlier, the English language is particularly equipped to deal with most of these things. If you look at some of the linguistics of tribal culture, they'll be much more non-dualistic. Like instead of saying I see a tree, I think they'll say, in some language, to say, well, there is a tree, and there's me, and then there's the act of seeing. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not personal. It's not identified.
And even Oskelga,
Yeah.
we're better equipped for some of these things. We don't say I'm angry. We say there's an anger on me. So you're not identifying with the anger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think there's possession in Irish, is there?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't think you can,
actually.
I think it's like, even if you have a car, it's like the
there's a
car is with me.
It's with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beside me.
Yeah.
So.
It's
Language,
actually more accurate.
language is crucial. Yeah, language is how we see the world. The world is made of language, as Terence McKenna said. And English constructs a particularly materialistic worldview, and then of course we're conditioned to think that's the only worldview, which it isn't, of course.
I wonder if what's the name of the author? 1984.
Orwell. Yeah.
I wonder if Orwell was onto something regarding the reduction of language to the point where we filter the world only through these. In 1984 anyway, they removed language so much so that the people could only think in a limited way.
Right.
And I think that is actually what has happened. But I don't know if there has been words removed or anything like that. But certainly the structure of it is designed to limit our consciousness.
And it's true. And I think we're at this point a really seminal point in human history right now. And it could go either way. We're looking at it either a very dystopian future potentially, or there's a potential for us to collectively dream a new reality, and really dream a new reality of shifting beyond the constructs of what have previously been thought about. Because everything is mind, and we create our own reality. So if enough people start changing their own personal realities, that will have an effect on the collective, and that's how it'll change. Yeah.
Guys, we've got 4 or 3.5 minutes to go. Is that something you really want to touch on, or if you want to explain to people how they will find out more about Inwardbound and so on?
Well, even if we can just get you to share all of your social media, website, stuff like that, when the next retreat is.
Plug away, guys.
And here's the plug. No, but go onto our website, inwardbound.ie, all one word, and you'll have all the information there about the retreats. Next one's in March, but it's full. You can add yourself to the waiting list for that one, or come along in May, and then the next one after that is maybe September. And then the same on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is Inwardbound Retreat, and Facebook is inwardbound.ie. And yeah, we'd love to hear from anyone who's interested. If it resonates with you, we'd love to have you on the retreat. Yeah, for sure.
Because you guys are obviously situated in Ireland, is there any therapy or other services that you guys provide in Ireland?
We, as part of the retreat service, we offer consultations. We have to be very careful with our language. We also have to be careful not to advertise in Ireland. So we are catering for foreign clients primarily.
Now, sorry to interject, but it would be if I just wanted a therapist, I would want someone who understands this stuff, regardless of psychedelics.
If you're looking for a psychotherapist, inwardbound.ie/psychotherapy, and you can do psychotherapy sessions with myself, Rob Coffey. I'm looking for clients in Dublin city centre. That's separate from the psychedelic experience, disclaimer.
But maybe if someone has their own psychedelic experience and wants to get in contact with people who understand the territory,
it's rob@inwardbound.ie. Inwardbound being the opposite of outward bound.
And can someone email you guys if they've had maybe a difficult experience and want to help processing and things like that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Fantastic.
We're very active in the community as well, apart from the business side of things. We're definitely very engaged in the community level and men's groups as well. Christos was at the last one.
Yeah, I just want to say that was amazing. Rob was, I suppose, hosting it, and we meditated, a bunch of lads basically. It was really great, and we were sharing whatever we wanted to share, which is very empowering as in today's society, you know, with the overly masculine energy, where we're sort of subsiding that feminine that we have within us to be emotional. And so it was nice speaking about the inner fire and Imbolc, which is a great Celtic tradition, and I want to say thank you guys, because and to anyone who's listening, is like this show and Mark and I coming together wouldn't have happened without you guys.
Yes.
from the Magic Mushrooms Day.
We were just
9/20 we celebrated International Magic Mushroom Day. We had an event in Dublin. You guys came along and we all had a good chat, didn't we?
Yeah, it was great.
I'd love to know how to get involved in the legalization process on a day-to-day basis, to be honest. Who do I email? Who do I contact? This stuff is very hard to find online. Like, who actually cares? Who do I contact?
Well, yeah, we do run a community site called shrooms.ie, and that's gathering signatures to petition government. And we've been writing to the Minister for Drugs whenever they've asked for a public consultation. So apart from the business, apart from Inwardbound, do that to one side, we are active in
You're
community
advocating.
We're advocating here, yeah. On a personal level, we want the laws to change, eventually, yeah. And it will change. It's on the ballot in Denver, Colorado, to legalize psilocybin, and that will be voted on in May. So if that is legalized, it'll create a little pinprick of, or a wave
Ripple
of
effect.
a trickle, and then people will start looking, going, oh, okay, well, maybe we have to, reassess our own laws based on what's happening abroad.
I think we're living in a very exciting time, guys, and we're
Good work, guys.
on the forefront of something very big. So, congratulations and well done, and you're very brave. And
thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks,
guys. This has been wonderful. Rob, David, Christo, Sharon, Mark. Thanks very much for listening, guys. Good luck.
Bye.
Done.